Good evening, folks. Chris Nitzo from Weather WIQ with a weather update looking at Tropical Cyclone Fina, which has recently been downgraded by the Bureau of Meteorology to a Category 1. Let's have a look at that. Category 1 system. You can see it's been very slow moving today and it hasn't quite played ball exactly the way it was supposed to. It was supposed to keep drifting south through the day today. It didn't quite do that. It sort of stuck around in one spot for the last 6 hours or so. The reason it's weakened today is what we call vertical wind shear. We can see there's lots and lots of rain and storms on the western side, very little going on the eastern side. You can see there's very little even cloud cover on the eastern side. It's very dry. Air has come in on that eastern side, and we're getting a fair amount of wind shear dragging all of the big deep storms to the west of the cyclone circulation. Over the top end, we've got a couple of showers, a couple of storms in a couple of places. Nothing too dramatic there just yet. Now, with these things, we tend to find that they do get into a nicer environment overnight, early in the morning on the oceans, and so therefore perhaps tomorrow morning we could be looking at a reinvigorated cyclone. And then as we go through the day tomorrow, the expectation is the system is expected to move in a southwesterly direction. The end result will be a system that passes nearby, most likely to the north of Darwin, up around the Tiwi Islands. That is our most likely expectation at this stage, even a touch further north of this track, but fairly close to this track is where we'd expect it. Now, really important to understand just how small the wind field is here. The destructive wind field of the cyclone is likely to be 100 kilometres in diameter. That means 50 kilometres in one side, 50 kilometres to the other. And you can see it's a little bit more on the north side than the south side. And in the east-west orientation, it's another 100 kilometres. So it's basically 100 by 100, right? So if you're not in that 100 by 100, you're not getting the destructive winds. And I need to draw that to your attention because there are some models that do bring this cyclone a little bit further to the north. And if it passes, say, right over the top of the Tiwis, just in through here, instead of down here, Darwin, more than 50 k's away, outside of the destructive core. If it passes on the southern edge of the Tiwis, Darwin, more than 50 k's away, outside of the destructive core. So it's really important that you understand that the destructive core of this cyclone only extends 50 kilometres from the centre of circulation. All right? And with that in mind, you need to understand that slight deviations, only slight deviations, if this forecast track moves another 20 to 30 kilometres north, Darwin will find itself outside of the destructive wind field. Obviously, if it moves 20 to 30 kilometres further south, Darwin will probably find itself in the centre of circulation. The trend of computer model guidance today has been to shift the cyclone further to the west than it was this morning. And the reason that they've done that is because the cyclone hasn't moved today. The expectation was that it would move today, it would move southwards. It hasn't moved today. It hasn't moved anywhere near the level and speed that we expected it to move, and therefore the track has started to push a little further to the west in the majority of guidances. That still keeps Darwin on the edge of the destructive core. And the other thing we need to be mindful of is now that the cyclone has weakened so much today, the idea is it may become a little bit more erratic in its motion. So it might jut to the west, it might jut to the south, to the north, probably not to the north, but to the south or to the west. It could jut those ways depending on exactly where its deepest convection develops. That's a hallmark of really small, weak cyclones, is they can jut around, play around, muck around, and find their centre again. And so what happens during that time, if it juts even further to the west, the end result of the track will take it further west away from Darwin. Now remember, 50 k's is the magic marker. If you're within 50 k's of the cyclone, you're within the damaging or the destructive core. The error margin of where the cyclone could be located is more than 50 k's. So if we take a look at where the cyclone could be located, the error margin is about 250 k's. So if it's in the northern side of this error margin, absolutely no major effects on Darwin whatsoever. If it's expected to track the way it's expected to track on the forecast map here, obviously major effects on Darwin. All right, so understand that there is a 250 kilometre error margin here. Remember, the destructive core is only 50 kilometres wide. So inside that error margin, it could be up here and we don't get any major impacts regarding wind, probably a fair bit of rain. all right, over Darwin. So it's really important that you understand the wind field of this thing is very, very small. So you need the cyclone within 50 k's of you to witness this destructive core. Now, going out to the gale radius, because gales can also cause us some problems, we can see that the gale radius is about double that. So you need to be about within 100 kilometres of the cyclone centre to get the gales. All right, so the gale radius is about 200 kilometres. So the idea is if the cyclone passes within 100 kilometres of you, you'll get gales with possible damaging winds. But the destructive stuff, the stuff that's going to knock down a lot of things, is that 50k stretch either side of the cyclone. And there's no guarantee that cyclone tracks in that exact path. That's why we have an error margin. Now, once the cyclone overnight early tomorrow begins adopting a southwesterly track, we shouldn't see too much deviation from the track. There may be, once again, because it's a small cyclone, there may be some little juts as it encounters the land. So there might be little, what we call little eye wobbles or centre wobbles. But overall, the track does appear to be reasonably stable there towards the southwest, at least through the Darwin region. So once again, you can see Darwin's on the edge of this deep area of purple and brown. So that means that there's a really high confidence level that the cyclone will pass just to the west of Darwin. But remember, is it going to pass within 50 k's? Or is it going to be passing more around 100 k's away? All right, that's the key here about whether we get the destructive stuff or whether we just get some gales and knock down some of those mahoganies you guys have wanted to knock down for a while. So, in summary, overnight tonight, we expect the cyclone to begin adopting a southwesterly track. Now, this southwesterly track could be fairly sharp towards the southwest/west-southwest and over the Tiwi Islands, or it could be a bit more of a south-southwesterly track and into the Van Diemen Gulf. All of those are inside the error margin. What you need to look out for is how close do you get to the centre of circulation? Are you within 50 k's? Are you within 100 k's? Or are you even outside the 100 k's? That's the key. They're the key numbers that we're looking for when it comes to destructive impacts. We'll know more once the cyclone actually starts to do something and starts to move. Make sure you're tuning in tomorrow night as we start to hone in on exactly where Cyclone Fina will go. If you like this analysis, make sure you get into the nitty-gritty with us in our subscription page at weatheriq.com.au/subscribe.